Darren called late. His voice clipped as if he had rehearsed every syllable. "Dad, you shouldn't come to the Christmas Eve party. It's better if you stay home." That was the first thing he said. No greeting, no hesitation. I steadied the phone against my ear. "What are you talking about?" he breathed sharply. "It's just, you're not a good fit for the kind of gathering I'm planning. People might feel awkward if you're there. A sentence like that hits with no smoke, no build-up. A clean strike." "Awkward for who? For everyone," he replied as if stating a fact. "Let's not make this harder." My throat tightened. Darren had spoken to me with impatience before, but this wasn't impatience. This was dismissal. I didn't trust myself to answer without letting anger spill, so the call ended fast. Not with an argument, just a click. The house felt different afterward, not because anything moved, but because something shifted between us. A message from my niece came a few minutes later. "Uncle Howard, did you know the venue Darren wanted got booked by someone else? He's been furious all week." I reread the text sitting at the table, where I used to help Darren with his school projects. A strange tension rose, not jealousy, not confusion, something older than both. A warning. Why would losing a venue push him to shut me out of Christmas Eve? Another call came in this time from my sister. She talked about unrelated things until she finally circled around to the one topic she clearly wanted to ask. "Howard, is everything all right between you two?" He sounded stressed earlier. I didn't give her anything. I wasn't ready to dissect a sentence that still stung across my chest. The night stretched with small interruptions, relatives checking in, cousins gossiping about Darren's outburst over the venue. Every comment pointed in the same direction. He had been scrambling for that place, telling people it was essential, acting as if the world would judge him based on where he held a Christmas party. Pieces slid into place in ways I didn't like. His need to impress, his need to manage the narrative, his need to control the setting. It wasn't new, but it had never intersected with me so directly. A father expects distance as kids grow up, but not exclusion, not erasure. By midnight, the phone had stopped buzzing. The house settled back into its rhythm, yet a thin thread pulled at me. Darren didn't just want to host a party without me. He wanted me removed from the picture entirely. The thought slipped in without permission. Quiet but firm. Something else was moving beneath the surface of his anger. Something bigger than a holiday event or a booked venue. Something that involved me in ways I couldn't see yet. News moved through my family faster than any truth ever could. By early morning, a cousin called to check in. Then another relative sent a message asking whether Darren and I had argued. None of them said much directly, but the tone was clear. Something had happened, and the version they heard didn't come from me. My sister finally asked the question everyone else danced around. "Howard, did you sign anything giving Darren permission to handle the Christmas event for you?" The words stopped me. "No, I didn't sign a thing." She hesitated. "He told a few people you did, that you wanted him to take over." The conversation ended soon after, but the doubt she carried lingered. Not her doubt in me, her doubt in whatever story Darren had been spreading. Families don't always follow logic. They follow momentum. Once a narrative gains speed, it rolls over whoever stands in its way. By the afternoon, I drove to Gilbert for a small gathering my sister hosted. People didn't talk to me differently, but their glances carried questions. Folks pretending everything was normal only made the tension thicker. A few remarks floated across the yard. Darren said his dad's been forgetful. He's stressed, poor guy, trying to take care of everything. Howard used to be so sharp with money. Not a single sentence was cruel, but each one chipped at something steady in me. I kept my expression neutral while listening. Anger would only confirm the story Darren had crafted. A man defending himself too loud always looks guilty. A little later, I slipped away to the side of the house to call the only person I trusted with anything related to paperwork, Marcia Torres. She had handled the closing for my shop years ago and still ran an office in Tempe. Marcia knew how to read between lines. When I stopped by her office, she welcomed me with a puzzled look. "You don't usually show up without an appointment. Everything all right?" "Something's off," I told her. "Darren's been talking to people. I need to check some things." She didn't waste time. What kind of things? Event reservations, legal documents, anything he might have asked about using my name. Marcia typed a few notes, asked a series of pointed questions, then leaned back. "Someone contacted a title office last week trying to get a copy of your property deed. They claimed to be working on insurance updates. The request was denied because the signature on the release form didn't match your previous documents." The room seemed to narrow. That was Darren. I can't say that she replied carefully, but the contact number used belongs to him. Marcia printed a brief record for me. No accusations, just facts. That made it heavier somehow. "If he's using my name," I said slowly, "he's doing more than banning me from a party." She nodded. "You need to be cautious. When small lies start to touch official paperwork, things can spiral." The drive back to Chandler gave me too much time to think. Darren hadn't simply acted out of frustration or embarrassment. He had laid groundwork telling family members I was losing control, planting doubt, easing them into the idea that he needed to step in. A slow build-up, a strategy. By evening, my niece called again. "Uncle Howard, please don't be mad, but Darren told Mom you've been mixing up bills lately. He said he'd been helping you behind the scenes." I steadied my voice. "That's not true," I figured she whispered. "But people believe him. He sounded convincing." That single sentence stayed with me. People believe him. I sat on the back step of my house, watching the neighborhood settle into its weekend rhythm. Kids playing down the street, a dog barking at nothing, a garage door opening across the road. Normal life kept moving, but everything in me felt shifted, unsettled. Not fear, exactly, more like standing on ground that looked stable, but tilted the moment you put weight on it. Darren had always been dramatic, but he had never crossed into legal territory. That was new. That was dangerous. Later that night, I called Marcia again. "Can you check one more thing for me? What do you need if anyone asked for updates on my financial records? Banks, insurance, tax documents? Anything?" She paused. "I'll look. But Howard, whatever this is, don't handle it alone." Her voice carried the kind of warning that doesn't rely on volume. After we hung up, I sat still for a while. Not thinking about anger or disappointment, those were simple. What settled over me was realization. Darren wasn't just preparing for a party. He was preparing a narrative where I couldn't manage my own life, where he had reason to take over. Something had started long before that phone call. I had just been too slow to see it. The night didn't end with answers, only movement. Family messages kept trickling in. A cousin mentioned Darren had sounded worried about me. Another said he had asked how to contact a lawyer for elder support planning. Each word added weight. Marcia's warning stayed with me through the night, and early the next day I drove to Scottsdale to speak with the staff at the event venue Darren had been chasing. The lobby held a few people waiting for appointments, none paying attention to me. A young woman at the desk asked what I needed, and I told her my name and why I was there. She checked the system, paused, then looked up with a mix of confusion and discomfort. "Mr. Ellison, someone already tried reserving the December 24th slot under your name." I asked who. She hesitated. "They said they were acting on your behalf. But the payment information didn't match the account listed, so the request wasn't approved." A cold pulse hit my stomach. What account did they use? She turned her monitor slightly. "This one." The numbers displayed weren't mine. They weren't close. Could I see the documentation? She printed a few pages. On top sat a faxed form with a scribbled version of my signature. It looked like someone traced an old document with a trembling hand. A line on the form claimed I had authorized Darren to manage the reservation. Another section contained contact details that belonged to him. The employee spoke carefully. We didn't process it because the signature didn't match your records. We flagged it internally, but no report has been filed. The urge to explain myself came fast and strong, but explaining would only trap me in a defensive posture. Better to ask simple questions, gather facts, and leave emotion out of the room. Did he say anything when the payment failed? He insisted you would handle it later, but nothing happened after that. Her voice softened when she added, "Sir, if someone is using your name, you may want to be cautious. Holiday bookings are one thing. Legal issues are another." The stack of papers felt heavier than the weight physically allowed. A forged signature isn't a small thing. It can pull a man into trouble before he even knows trouble exists. Walking back to the parking lot, a thought pressed at me. Darren hadn't only banished me from a celebration. He was constructing a version of reality where I couldn't participate because I was unfit. And now he was backing that story with falsified documents. Reaching my truck, a familiar voice echoed across the parking area. "Yeah, well, he's always been slow with this stuff." Darren's back faced me as he walked toward the entrance phone to his ear. His tone carried irritation, not shame. If he had just signed it, we wouldn't be scrambling right now. His pace quickened. "No, don't worry. I'll handle him. He won't even know." Those last 4 words landed like a hammer. He rounded the corner and disappeared into the building. He never saw me. A few seconds passed before I could move. Seeing him at the venue wasn't the shock hearing him talk about me like a burden sealed something in my chest. Family stories often follow the pattern of the loudest voice, not the truest one. Back in the driver's seat, I replayed everything from the last 2 days. Darren's dismissal, the gossip about my unstable finances, the forged signature, the shift in tone among relatives. None of it pointed to a son fighting with his father. It pointed to someone preparing a case. Marcia's words echoed. When small lies touch official paperwork, things can spiral. Spiral felt like the perfect description of the direction things were heading. A message buzzed on my phone as I pulled out of the lot, a cousin asking whether I needed help organizing expenses because Darren said I'd been mixing things up lately. Not anger, not sadness. Something else rose clarity. A line had been crossed, and now I could finally see it. Driving back toward Chandler, sunlight hit the dashboard in sharp streaks. The whole city moved in its usual rhythm, but I felt disconnected from it. It's strange when a life stays the same on the surface, while the ground beneath shifts. Later in the day, I stopped by a hardware store to pick up a few things. An ordinary errand gave me space to breathe. But even then, the thought returned. Darren had sabotaged a reservation, forged my name, and planted doubt in the family, all for a party he claimed I didn't belong to. A man doesn't do that over a holiday event. He does it when he's after something bigger. When I got home, I laid the printed papers on the table and studied the forged signature. The more I looked at it, the more the curve of each letter revealed how much the person behind it thought he could get away with. A phone vibrated again this time, a voicemail from Darren. "Dad, we need to talk. Things are getting messy because you're not cooperating. Just sign what you need to sign, and stop dragging this out." He spoke as if a decision had already been made, and I was merely delaying it. As if my role was to comply. Not long after that, another message. "You don't understand what's at stake. If you had just trusted me, none of this would be happening." The tone wasn't worried. It was irritated, pressuring, almost annoyed that I had not played along. I stood at the counter listening to both recordings twice. The words, the entitlement, the impatience, all of it matched the forged signature more than it matched the son I once knew. Night settled before I noticed the time. The papers lay spread before me, and the house held the same stillness it always did, yet my certainty about where things were headed deepened. The papers from the venue stayed on my kitchen table through the night. By morning, the forged signature looked even more careless than I remembered. The strokes were uneven, almost rushed. Whoever filled out the form believed no one would inspect it closely. That kind of confidence only grows when a person thinks they already control the story. I drove to Tempe to show Marcia the documents. Her office sat in a modest strip center, the type of place where people came when they needed things done correctly, not quickly. She motioned for me to sit the moment I walked in. "What did you find?" I placed the faxed sheet in front of her. She studied it a long moment, then lowered her voice. "This pattern shows up in cases where someone's trying to pull a deed copy without the owner's involvement. Same shaky curves, same pressure marks. So he tried to get my house deed." "Someone tried," she said. "But yes, everything points in that direction." A weight settled behind my ribs, not fear comprehension. Once you understand why something is happening, the sting changes. Confusion disappears, leaving a sharper edge behind. Marcia pulled up my county records. "There was a request last week to update your beneficiary. They rejected it because the office flagged the signature." She turned the monitor slightly so I could read the notation myself. Signature inconsistent with verified documents. The screen didn't shock me. What hit harder was how close the request came to going through. Then my phone buzzed. A message from the bank. "Unusual activity detected on your account. Temporary security hold applied." I clicked through the alert. 3 attempts to gain access within 12 hours. Not 1 attempt, 3. Someone had been persistent, not desperate. Marcia watched my expression change. "What happened?" "Someone tried getting into my savings account." Her eyebrows tightened. "That's escalation. You need to take steps now." I didn't answer. A knot had formed in my chest, not panic, something steadier, colder. On the drive toward Mesa, later that afternoon, a call from my niece came through. She sounded unsettled. "Uncle Howard, I don't know if I should say this, but Darren told Mom he might need to talk to a lawyer to, help manage your finances. He said you're overwhelmed." "Overwhelmed," his words, not mine. "He made it sound like he's stepping up for you." Her discomfort said enough. Darren wasn't just lying, he was performing. He was shaping a narrative where he took control because I couldn't. Mesa held a family gathering that evening at my nephew's house. Conversations drifted from sports to work, but every now and then I caught fragments. He's planning to step in if his dad can't handle things. Someone has to help at that age. Maybe it's for the best. People weren't cruel. They were simply repeating what they believed to be true. The moment I stepped into the kitchen to refill my water, 2 relatives stopped talking abruptly. That silence carried more weight than anything they could have said. I drove home as the sun dropped behind the houses, forming long shadows across the road. That stretch of highway between Mesa and Chandler had always calmed me, but not that night. There was pressure building from all sides like a tide pushing toward some point I couldn't yet see. When I reached my place, the back door sat slightly open. Not a lot, barely a sliver, but open enough to show it hadn't latched. Nothing looked damaged. Some items were shifted on the counter, not stolen, only moved. A message from Marcia arrived moments later. "Call me when you can. Someone just submitted a temporary power of attorney with your name on it. We rejected it, but you need to see this." I phoned her immediately. "Did Darren turn it in?" "They didn't use his name, but the document lists your address and your birth date, and the signature." She hesitated. It's the same imitation. Whoever did it isn't good at forging, but sometimes a poor copy slips through a busy office. My pulse didn't spike. Everything inside me simply aligned. Darren had crossed from manipulation into territory with legal consequences. That shift meant I no longer had the luxury of waiting to see if things would calm down. Marcia continued. If someone is trying to obtain POA, they're planning to take control immediately. You need to file a protective statement first thing tomorrow. For a long second, the only sound in the room was the hum of the refrigerator. No fear. No shock. Just a sense that the path forward had changed. Send me whatever you have, I told her. I will, she said. Please don't ignore this, Howard. After we hung up, I set my keys on the counter and stood still, absorbing everything at once: the forged deed, request the fabricated reservation form, the attempted bank access, the POA submission, the gossip planted through the family. Darren hadn't stumbled into poor decisions. He was executing a plan, and he believed he could carry it out before I understood what was happening. The night settled around the house, while my mind continued moving. That shift earlier, the one that started days ago, now became unmistakable. Darren wasn't trying to cut me out of a celebration. He was preparing to cut me out of my own life. The lobby of the Maricopa County building carried its usual mix of echoing footsteps and clipped conversations, but none of that mattered. A clerk pointed me toward a counter where an older man adjusted his glasses and asked for my ID. He scrolled through the system, paused, and gave a look that told me he'd seen more than he wanted to. Mr. Ellison, there have been multiple inquiries tied to your records, he said. What kind of inquiries? He clicked another tab, requests for deed copies, beneficiary updates, and 2 phone calls asking about conservatorship procedures. The word sank like a stone. Who called? The notes say your son. Darren Ellison. He stated you've been struggling with clarity and needed someone to help oversee your finances. The clerk didn't say it maliciously. He was simply reading the file, unaware his words were cutting through decades of history between a father and a son. He printed a packet of documents. You should file a protective statement. It flags your account, so any future requests must require your in-person approval. A pen appeared in front of me, along with the form. My hand didn't tremble, though something dull pressed behind my sternum. Years of dismissing small jabs from Darren, the impatient sighs, the digs about my pace, the jokes about my age, all of it collected into one sharp realization he'd learned how to weaponize my silence. After finishing the paperwork, I stepped outside. A breeze swept across the parking lot, carrying the faint smell of asphalt warming in the sun. Calls began lighting up my phone the moment I reached my truck. 2 cousins, a brother-in-law, a voicemail from an aunt. The next call came through before I could start the engine. Howard, did you and Darren get into something? My cousin Lois asked. He's saying there's tension. We're worried. Tension, I repeated. The word felt both exaggerated and insufficient. Well, he said you've been forgetful and stressed. He said you're pushing him away when he's trying to help. I let the silence stretch long enough for her to sense the problem. Lois, I didn't ask him for anything. Oh, her tone softened. Then something isn't adding up. When the call ended, a heaviness settled in my shoulders. Darren wasn't improvising. He'd been laying groundwork in the family, building a story piece by piece, ensuring that when he reached for control, no one would question why. The drive home passed through familiar streets of Chandler houses. I'd repaired things for neighbors, who waved when I walked my dog in the mornings. That normalcy felt oddly distant as I pulled into my driveway. The back door sat ajar again. Not wide, just open enough for someone to slip in and out without forcing anything. A broom leaned differently against the wall. A drawer sat slightly pulled. Nothing taken. Nothing blatantly wrong. Everything wrong. A message pinged from Marcia Call Me. New update. She picked up before the first ring fully sounded. Someone tried again, she said. Another forged inquiry. Different format, same handwriting style. They're testing what they can slip past. Was it Darren? The person didn't list a name, but all the identifiers belong to you, date of birth. Parcel number, address. Whoever did this knows your records. She didn't need to say more. Howard, you have to understand, she added, once a temporary power of attorney is accepted, it grants authority immediately. No court hearing. No delay. A long breath left my chest steady rather than strained. So he's trying to take control now. It seems that way. I walked through the house while talking, touching the edges of counters, checking the locks again. The laundry basket held the same shirts I'd folded yesterday. The sink had the same dishes waiting. Life looked unchanged on the surface, yet the ground underneath felt altered. Marcia continued, I'm sending you digital copies of everything. Start a file, protect yourself before he escalates. Thank you, I said. After the call ended, I returned to the back door, slid the deadbolt firmly, and tested it twice. The house settled around me with the muted hum of appliances, but calm didn't follow. Not fear either, more like recognition. For years I assumed Darren's frustration came from impatience or pride. Now it was clear he'd used those small conflicts to justify a larger ambition. He didn't just want to run a holiday party. He wanted the authority that came with holding someone's legal reins. The form I signed at the county office sat on the table. Above my printed name, a line read, affirms that no authorization has been granted to any third party regarding financial or property matters. That sentence carried a note of finality. Not dramatic. Just true. Night edged closer while I gathered the packet from the county, the forged signature from the venue, the screenshots of bank alerts. A small pile formed physical evidence that the ground between Darren and me had shifted permanently. I sat down not to reflect, but to think. One simple fact threaded through everything. Each step Darren took grew bolder. If I didn't move now, whatever came next would arrive without warning. Marcia's email arrived early, the subject line short enough to suggest urgency. The attached audio file sat beneath it like a warning. Her message read, "Listen when you're ready. It's important." The recording opened with the crackle of a phone line. Then Darren's voice surfaced, calm, measured, too controlled, to be honest. "Dad's been drifting a little," he told the staffer. "Mild memory issues. Nothing dramatic, but he forgets details. I'm helping him manage his property so nothing gets misplaced." Hearing him say those words didn't spark anger. Something heavier settled in its place, the kind of heaviness that comes when a truth you suspected finally stands in front of you without disguise. Darren didn't hesitate. He didn't stumble. His tone carried the confidence of someone accustomed to bending a story until it served a purpose. The staffer in the recording sounded hesitant. "We still need his signature. It's already on file," Darren replied quickly. "I can resend it." The tape cut there, but the damage landed fully. A notification buzzed through before I could replay it. A long text from Darren lit the screen. "You're undermining everything I'm trying to do. If you ruin Christmas Eve, I will make sure everyone knows you're not stable. Don't push me into decisions I don't want to make." Not one word acknowledged the forged signature or the false claims. Every line twisted the blame toward me. I headed to Scottsdale waterfront not to escape, but to confirm what else he'd been doing behind my back. The event manager, a woman named Claire, greeted me with a professional nod. Her desk carried a stack of reservation forms and a tablet with flagged entries. "Mr. Ellison, your son used your name several times," she explained. "Our system flagged inconsistencies, so we paused his requests." "Did he say why he needed everything under my name?" She tapped a file. He claimed the celebration was technically yours, and he was helping you because you weren't good with paperwork anymore. My jaw tensed, though no reaction reached my voice. Thank you for telling me. She hesitated before adding, We've seen these situations with families before. People assume they can smooth it over later. They usually can't. Her words hung between us as I stepped into the corridor. Darren stood near a planter a few yards away, phone pressed to his ear. His shoulders stiffened when he noticed me. The call ended abruptly, and he walked over with an expression almost rehearsed. You're making this far more complicated than it needs to be, he started. I didn't authorize any of the things you've been doing, I answered. He frowned like someone unfairly accused. You misunderstood. I was trying to get ahead of problems. You've been slipping. People see it. That's not true. You think I want to handle your mess. I'm doing what a responsible son does. The word responsible landed bitter. Darren adjusted his tone to something softer, almost fragile. Look, the signature thing. That was a mix-up. The file didn't scan right. I wasn't forging anything. You always assume the worst. I assume what the evidence shows, I said. His eyes narrowed, the act of gentleness falling fast. You're clinging to control because you can't accept change. You want to pretend everything's the same. That's the problem. No shouting erupted, no dramatic gestures, only a conversation sharpened by years of unspoken strain. Darren didn't defend himself. He manipulated angles, dodged accountability, and painted himself as the victim standing bravely in the crossfire of his father's resistance. We stood in that hallway without moving until his phone chimed again. He glanced at the screen, and something in his face faltered. Color drained slightly. He answered in a hushed rush. Yeah, I'm here, he whispered. Keep it together. Don't say anything yet. If they discover the signature, I'm done. His words weren't meant for me, yet they closed the distance between suspicion and certainty. He stepped toward the exit with quick, uneven strides, leaving his final sentence echoing behind him. My hands stayed still at my sides as I watched him go. The hallway felt wider, carrying the sounds of strangers walking past, unaware of what had just unfolded. A truth that had been circling for days finally found its landing point. I left the building without checking the time, heading toward the parking garage, with the recording still looping in my head. The audio, the text message, the forged paperwork, each piece slid into place. The situation wasn't drifting anymore. It had direction, momentum, and consequences I could no longer ignore. The manager at the venue greeted me with a familiar nod. Years of hosting community banquets and charity nights, there had built a quiet trust between us, and she didn't bother with small talk. Her fingers tapped a few keys before she glanced up. You want the 24th, Mr. Ellison? That's the one. It's yours. No hesitation. The straightforward response steadied something in me. No questioning, no doubt, just recognition. She printed the confirmation and slid it across the counter. My signature went onto the form, with one clean motion, nothing shaky or hesitant. Not the signature Darren had tried to replicate. Let us know if you need staff or catering, she added. We'll take care of you. That simple assurance settled deeper than I expected. Action had replaced the frustration that had been gnawing at me for days. No explanations, no justifying, just moving forward. I stepped back into the evening air and walked to the truck with the reservation tucked safely in my pocket. Plans didn't need polish. They only needed clarity. The next calls went out to siblings, cousins, a few longtime friends. I'm hosting Christmas Eve this year, I told each of them. You not Darren. No, just come by. Same time as always. They didn't question the change. Some sounded relieved. One aunt laughed softly and said, about time. By late afternoon the next day, the venue buzzed with soft conversation and the shuffle of chairs. Family trickled in with covered dishes and jackets pulled close against the mild desert cold. I shook hands, accepted brief hugs, and guided trays of food to the long tables. People fell into their usual groups, and the sound of it all blended into something I hadn't heard in a long time, belonging without tension. No one asked about Darren. A few children darted past with candy canes nearly knocking into me as I balanced a platter. Their mother called after them, and I stepped aside, letting the ease of the moment fill the space around us. Hosting again felt familiar, as if I'd slipped back into a role I hadn't realized I'd missed. The door opened sharply near 6. Darren stepped through with his shoulders squared, as if entering a battlefield he thought he owned. The expression on his face froze mid-stride, every chair full, every plate served, every relative gathered in a room he believed was his to command. He scanned the tables, jaw tightening. For a beat, no one noticed him. Then my sister caught sight of him and whispered something to her husband. Heads slowly turned. Darren forced a smile and walked toward the reception desk. "There's been a mistake," he told the staffer. "This date was mine." The young man behind the counter checked the system. "No, sir. This reservation belongs to Mr. Ellison. I'm Mr. Ellison." The staffer didn't flinch. "You used a different account and didn't complete payment. Also, the ID didn't match." Murmurs spread among the tables. My brother rose from his seat, exchanging a troubled look with his wife. Darren's voice climbed a notch. "That date should have been held. I talked to someone here days ago. This is supposed to be my event." The staffer stayed calm. "Nothing was finalized because the information you provided wasn't valid." He stared at me across the room. Anger flickered quick and sharp, but something else hid under it, panic. His hand lifted slightly as if he meant to gesture me over, but he dropped it when he noticed people watching. "You did this to embarrass me?" he said loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. "I made a reservation," I answered. "You took this from me. It wasn't yours." A cousin stood. Another uncle followed. No one shouted. They simply saw the situation as it was. The story Darren had been spreading, the rumor that I was slipping, losing control, drifting, cracked under its own weight. He spun toward the group. "He's lying. All of you have no idea what's going on. I've been trying to help him." My sister cut him off gently. "Help him with what, Darren? This looks like you tried to take over something that wasn't yours to begin with." Her tone didn't accuse. It observed. That made it worse for him. Darren's frustration built in restless movements, fingers tightening at his sides, shoes shifting. His glance bounced between faces that no longer mirrored his version of events. A few cousins looked away, not wanting to be pulled into the drama. Even the children went still. He took a step closer to me. "You set me up. I didn't set anything," I replied. "You created a story. It couldn't hold." He breathed through his nose chest, rising with a hard swallow. "You enjoy making me the villain?" "No," I said. "You did that on your own." A long silence followed, not the calm kind, but the kind built from truths finally seen in full. Darren's posture sagged for a moment before he caught himself and straightened again, trying to reclaim authority. No one moved toward him. No one defended him. The room simply watched. He muttered something I couldn't make out, and headed for the exit with fast, uneven strides. The door shut behind him, and the conversation slowly resumed, tentative at first, then easing back into their rhythm. I carried a tray toward the buffet, as if nothing monumental had occurred, though people brushed my arm gently as I walked by, small gestures, acknowledging the shift none of us had spoken aloud. Darren's absence left a space, but not a gap. More like a door finally closing without a slam. I set the tray down, reached for a serving spoon, and the evening moved on with steady momentum, pulling everyone back into the celebration he had tried so hard to control. The county building felt cooler than usual when I walked in the next morning, a stack of documents tucked under my arm. The clerk at the counter recognized me and motioned for me to step forward without waiting in line. She'd seen me enough times these past weeks to understand something serious was unfolding. "I have materials to file," I said, placing the folder on her desk. She opened it carefully. The printed fax with the forged signature. The audio transcript Marcia had helped me retrieve. The notes from the venue about the attempted reservation under my name. Her eyes tightened as she skimmed each page. "Do you want these added to the fraud prevention file?" "Yes," I answered. "All of them." She nodded and slipped the documents into a labeled tray. The sight of them leaving my hands brought a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Once they entered the system, the process would move on without me shaping every step. That thought steadied me more than I expected. I filled out the final form, confirming I hadn't granted Darren any authority over my property or finances. My name went onto the page with a calm stroke of the pen. No tremor, no hesitation. When I stepped outside, the sun felt warmer than it had earlier. I stood there for a moment, not searching for meaning, just letting the air settle around me. My phone buzzed. A new message from Darren. "Dad, can we talk? I need to explain." People misunderstood what I was trying to do. Another followed almost immediately. "Just give me 5 minutes. I know things look bad, but we can fix this." A third one arrived as I read the second. "If you keep pushing this, I'm done. Don't make me the enemy." No reply came from me. The words didn't pull at anything anymore. They felt like the last pieces of something already broken. On the drive home, several relatives called. Some asked if I was all right. Others sounded confused, unsure what exactly had happened at the party. The story was traveling faster than I imagined. I kept my responses brief. "I'm fine. Everything's being handled." Most of them seemed relieved by my tone alone. A few apologized for doubting me weeks earlier, though I never said they did. I didn't hold it against them. Darren had always been persuasive when he wanted something. Back at the house, the familiar creak of the front steps met me. Tools sat on the bench where I'd left them the night before. Fixing small things for neighbors had once been a chore I did out of habit, but now the routine felt grounding. The simplicity of tightening screws or replacing loose hinges made sense in a way the past month hadn't. The locksmith arrived that afternoon. "You replacing all of them?" he asked. "Yes. All." He didn't press further. The job took 2 hours. When he finished, he placed the new keys in my palm. "Should be secure now." After he left, I stood in the hall for a bit, listening to the soft click of each new lock as I tested them. Not for reassurance, just confirmation that the transition from fear to action was complete. Later in the evening, I opened my laptop and updated every financial password. Each change reinforced a subtle divide that had been forming for years, but never acknowledged. A trust document followed, cleaner, simpler, with protections Darren wouldn't be able to slip through. The decisions came steadily, not rushed. They felt like necessary maintenance, the kind I used to do on old appliances, remove worn-out parts, install new ones, and let the system run better. When the work was done, I brewed a cup of coffee and sat near the back window. The yard needed trimming. A ladder leaned near the shed, waiting for the weekend. Life resumed its ordinary shape in small ways. The phone chimed again. Another message from Darren. Short this time. Please. My thumb hovered over the screen, not because I intended to respond, but because I wanted to acknowledge the feeling of choosing not to. Silence didn't belong to him anymore. The next morning, a call came from Marcia. She didn't ask how I was doing or offer long explanations. She simply said, "Everything's been closed out on our end. You're safe now." Her voice carried a steady confidence. Nothing dramatic. After we hung up, I pulled open the filing drawer and slid the remaining documents into a folder. The latch clicked shut with a firm, uncomplicated sound. I grabbed my jacket, stepped outside, and locked the door behind me. The air smelled faintly of dust and sun-warmed concrete. A drive had been overdue anyway. There was a trail near Sedona. I'd been meaning to try one. People said wasn't too crowded this time of year. The truck started easily. As I backed out of the driveway, a neighbor waved from across the street with a wrench in his hand, asking if I could look at his gate later. I nodded through the window. After I get back, I called out. He gave a thumbs up, and I pulled away from the curb. The road opened ahead, long and steady, the kind that lets a person breathe without thinking too hard. My hands rested on the wheel with an ease I hadn't felt in weeks. The past wasn't gone. It just wasn't steering anymore. I drove north toward the red rocks, letting the miles unfold without telling them what to mean.